At this time I want to invite Pinchas ben Chaim up here to come and give us a drash.
It's an honor to be here once again on this very, very holy occasion to offer a few words of meditation. I have a text in mind, and I love these sidurs that we have, that we all have them in our hands and we don't have to run anywhere, because I'm just going to tell you to open a page in the sidur because my text is right there. On page 136 and 137, at the very top of the page. It's a section of the Selichot prayers we read right after the 13 attributes of God's mercy. And these words just ring in my heart today as I was thinking, what should I focus on? They just stuck out for me. For some of you, they may stick out as well. It says, Slachlanu avinu ki chatanu, machalanu malchenu ki fashanu. Forgive us, our Father, for we have sinned. Pardon us, our King, for we have transgressed. For you, Lord, are good and forgiving, abounding in loving kindness to all who call on you. This is just a verse, just a little tiny passage from Psalm 86. If these words sound familiar to you, if they ring in your ears as they do in mine, perhaps it is because we say these words pretty much every day, except Shabbat. But every day. Last time I talked to you about repeating and walking, and now perhaps you're seeing more and more why we repeat things over and over, because they etch in our minds. And then they rise up just at the right moment, when I need it. I'm standing here and I'm thinking, Slachlanu avinu, forgive us, our Father. It's there. It's etched into my very being after being with those words for so many days. So I read them, and what do I think about? I think about our Father. I think about God who calls himself our Father. And I think about him also as a king. And those are two images that sometimes are not so easy to reconcile. Because when you think of Father, you think of closeness, you think of tenderness, you think of connection, this child-parent connection. But when you think about a king, you think of somebody royal, someone on the throne, right? And so sometimes those images do not blend so well, unless, of course, you are a prince or a princess. Then they blend for you perfectly. So I have a little story to tell you. It's actually a story from a children's book, but I think it's very profound. Once upon a time, there was a kingdom, and there was a princess living in a palace of a king. And she was very dissatisfied with her royal existence. She was really sick and tired of being a princess. She wanted to be just like everybody else. So one day she took off her beautiful royal dress and went to her closet looking for something more common. She put on something common. It didn't quite work. Still too nice. So she called one of the servant girls and exchanged her clothes with her. And now that she was dressed in proper peasant attire, she went into the back of the palace and slipped out through the secret door that was camouflaged, and it just led into the garden. And through the garden she went and into the town, because she wanted to be just like everybody else. In the town, she saw kids playing in the street. They were kicking the ball, they were screaming, they were yelling, and she wanted to play with them, so she sat on the side of the road looking at them. Before you know, the kids noticed her, they called her over, and she joined their game. And before you know, she was fully enjoying and playing the game. When they ran, she ran. When they screamed and yelled, she screamed and yelled. They pushed and shoved with their elbows, and she pushed and shoved with her elbows. She was just like them, like everybody else. For a few minutes, she forgot she was a princess. When they missed the ball and they started cursing and swearing, she screamed loudly as she could the same exact curses and swear words that she learned from them. She was just like them. And then all of a sudden, there was a commotion in the street. Somebody screamed, "Come, come, everyone come." Everyone in the street started running to the central street of the town, and as they ran, the kids also followed them. The adults lined the streets, just standing shoulder to shoulder, forming this impregnable wall. And the kids tried to push through between the adults, but they couldn't. They were dirty, they were smelly, they were rolling in the dirt, and the adults told them, "Get away from us." And they said, "What's going on?" "The king is coming. The king is coming." And sure enough, king's chariot was coming to the street, and he stopped in the street, and the kids really wanted to see the king. So what did they do? Like a flock of monkeys, they scurried up the tree, and they climbed into the tree, and they looked down upon the king, and everyone bowed before the king, and they said, "Long live the king." And they gave him honor and respect. But the kids sitting in the tree decided to make fun of the king. So they started throwing garbage at him and spitting. And that moment, that princess, who also sat on the bench next to her new friends, said, "Stop! You can't do that." All of a sudden, she saw the king wipe things from his face. She says, "You can't do that." And they said, "Why not? We're having fun. This is so much fun. They can't reach us way up in the tree." He says, "That's my father. You can't do that to him." And they said, yeah, your father and queen is our mother. You're just a dirty, stinky kid like us. You're a beggar who's living on the street. Yeah, go ahead. So they pushed her off the tree, and she tumbled down, and she fell to the ground. She bruised herself. She bruised her knee. She bruised her elbow. She started bleeding. In shame and sorrow and pain, she ran away. As she ran home towards the palace, she thought to herself, "Sure, he didn't see me. I'm covered in dirt. I'm wearing peasant's clothes. I'm in the tree with a bunch of peasant kids. Surely he didn't see me." And she ran home to the garden, to the secret hidden door, and she pulled on the hidden handle, and the door would not open. It was locked. So she knew there was another passage. She ran to the servants' quarters, another hidden door. That door was also not open, closed from the inside. She had to go through the front door, and she could not face anyone. She was so ashamed. She's covered in dirt. She's bleeding. She's ashamed. So she waited till darkness came. And finally, when the darkness came, she approached the main entrance of the palace, and she knocked just quietly. And the door swung open. And who was standing at the door? The king, her father. He waited for her, and she fell on her knees, and she cried, and she wailed, and she begged forgiveness and pardon, and said all the words that a child in that condition would say. And he picked her up and carried her away, cleaned her up. She got a bath. She got a meal. He bandaged her up, cleaned up her wounds. And as he was putting her to bed that night and walking away in the hallway, she glanced at him, and on the corner of his robe, she saw the dirt and the blood, her blood. And she thought to herself, "My father's royal robe is soiled with the things that I've done. How can I live with myself?" And her father, sensing that something was going on, turned around and saw just the tears flowing down her face. And she says, "Don't worry, child. You will probably do something like this again. But the next time you do it, I will still be standing right there by the open door to welcome you back." I tell you this simple story because I think it illustrates something really powerful, a profound truth. The word I have for you today is pardon. Not forgiveness per se, but pardon, because you see, I think the word forgiveness, we have used it so many times. For me, at least, maybe it's just me, but I feel like it's losing its power. We say all the time, forgive me, forgive me. Pardon is what I'm thinking about. Because, pardon is pardon is when you're guilty. We sometimes ask forgiveness for something we haven't even done, we're not even sure we have done. We're kind of, sort of sorry. But pardon means you have been sentenced. Pardon means that you have been judged, and you're probably even serving your sentence, and you're partially already experiencing the pain and the suffering of your misdeeds. And at that moment, pardon comes, and maybe you don't get to serve out your entire sentence, and you're free. So I'm thinking of the word pardon. Because whenever we sin, we do experience some of that pain and punishment the moment we realize it. We are already starting to serve that sentence in a way. And so the word pardon speaks to me on a different level. So why should the king pardon her daughter? Why should the king pardon us? You know how many Jewish people right now are sitting in the synagogues or standing before God, beating their chests, saying the same prayers we said. And for many of them, the last time they said prayers before God was probably Pesach. Why should the king forgive us? Why should he pardon us? And the truth is, we have neglected our royal calling. We wanted to be like everybody else. Maybe we walked away. Maybe we said we want the easy path. We don't want to get up early in the morning, put on tefillin, and say the Shema. We just want to go and get a bagel like everybody else and go into work. And that's it. Why should the king pardon us? Because the king is not just a king. He's also our Father. When I realize when I say these words, the reason why they ring true in my heart is because I say them so often. Because we have relationship. Because he hears these words from me all the time. And when you have a relationship, when the king is not just someone distant on the throne, but he is also your father. He's also close to you. That's why he would pardon. That's why he would forgive. Because there's a connection, because there's a relationship that simply cannot be done away with. That's just the fact of life. So as we stand before our King and our Father on this holy day, and we recognize that year after year we come before him and he stands with the open arms at that door, opening us, forgiving, kind, and loving. May we learn the power of pardon. May we recognize why our King pardons us. And may we learn how to pardon others who may have caused us harm and brought us suffering. May we learn how to be like our King.